for glory and for beauty. So for the glory of God, they're to make holy garments. And these holy garments were meticulously made. The Bible tells us, Exodus 39:2, they made pomegranates of blue and purple and scarlet material and twisted linen on the hem of the robe. They also made bells of pure gold and put the bells between the pomegranates all around the hem of the robe. So here you see a close-up of the hem. Go back again and you can see right below the blue on the screen. The blue, it was called an ephod. Right at the bottom of it, on the hem of it, they had these pomegranates and these bells. And here again is the close-up of those pomegranates and bells on the high priest's garment. Now, why is that important? Well, it's important to the Jews in the Middle East because of this. They claim that if you cut open a pomegranate, that you will find 613 seeds. And that was important because you all know there were 10 commandments. But the scribes and the Pharisees and those Sadducees, they got together and they said, well, we have 10 laws, 10 commandments, but they're not specific enough. For example, the fourth commandment about the Sabbath day tells us to keep it holy, but it doesn't tell us how to keep it holy. So they made up some extra rules to help us understand not only the fourth commandment, but all the commandments. And one of their extra rules about the fourth commandment was a Sabbath day's journey. They were saying you could walk 2/3 of a mile, and that wasn't work, but if you walked a whole mile, then that was work. And so they actually had 613 of these laws to interpret the 10. And the Jews believed that no matter what the size of the pomegranate, if you cut it open, you will find 613 seeds. Now, we happen to know, because we counted them, that that's not necessarily true. There's about an average of 613, but we do know that the Jews believed the pomegranates were almost sacred. It became a very important part of their religion. Some pomegranates have more than 700, some have 500 seeds, but it's about an average of 613. And they believe that represents the laws that they created. Look at the pomegranate. If you cut it in half and clean it up a little bit, it looks like this. And what you'll notice is, in a typical star, the star has 5 points. But the Jewish star, which is called the Star of David, it has 6 points. And it is believed that those 6 points are taken from the pomegranate. That the pomegranate itself, when cut in half, looks like a 6-sided star. You might be interested to know that just recently an ivory pomegranate was found in the Middle East, and it looked like what's on the screen. This is actually a picture of it, and inscribed on the neck of this ivory pomegranate are the words, belonging to the temple of Yahweh, holy to the priest. Now, the carbon dating on this has traced it back to the 8th century BC, so the timing is perfect that it belonged to the Temple of Solomon. And if so, it is the only artifacts that we have from Solomon's temple. And that's kind of amazing when you stop to think about it. But there's the pomegranate. Now, this particular pomegranate is this ivory pomegranate. It has a hole carved in the bottom of it, which shows that perhaps it was put on what's called a scepter. It was maybe the decorative end of a stick. But it was used in the temple service. So what we find here is these pomegranates had a great deal to do with the Jewish religion. In fact, you find it in many, many places in archaeology. Even on the coins that they had, there were pictures of pomegranates. We find this text in Exodus 28. The robe shall be on Aaron when he ministers, and its tinkling shall be heard when he enters and he leaves the holy place before the Lord, so that he will not die. So on the edge of his robe, he had alternating pomegranates that were made of linen and wool. They weren't real pomegranates. And bells. That was on the edge of the ephod that he wore. So he's going into the most holy place once a year on the Day of Atonement, and you can hear him go in because the bells are jingling. And you can hear him go out because the bells are jingling. But you know what? Tradition has it. This isn't in the Bible, so you won't find this in Scripture. But tradition has it that when the priest went into the most holy place once a year on the Day of Atonement, that a rope was tied around his leg or his ankle. Because if he went in there and he was not worthy, he had unconfessed sins, he would be struck dead instantly, and no one could go pull him out because they would be struck dead. And so tradition has it that they pull him out with a rope. The carcass or the body would be pulled out with a rope. Now, we don't know that ever happened, of course, but it's an interesting thought. So we know that the priests, when they ministered, they had bells and pomegranates on the bottom, on the hem of their garments. And they did this once a year on the Day of Atonement. And of course, atonement means at one-ment. And when the atonement was completed, that time is Calvary. The salvation was completed. At one-ment was completed at Calvary. The population of Jerusalem today is 0, but I have good news for you. The provision has been made that the city can hold the number of the sands of the sea. A great multitude. The city is that large. The population is 0, but John said he saw it coming down out of heaven, and that the saints would inhabit the city. This text refers to the Day of Atonement that we've just been talking about. And it says, "How blessed are the people who know the joyful sound." This is Psalms 89:15. What was happening on the Day of Atonement is the priest would minister in the sanctuary, in the most holy place. And when he was not struck dead, the people could hear, they could listen, and they could hear him sprinkling the blood, because as he walked around, it would jingle. And as it jingled, they knew that the offering was acceptable. And then when the offering was completed, he would walk out of the sanctuary, and guess what? They would start blowing the trumpets, and there'd be this huge celebration because they had heard the sound that their salvation had been completed by the high priest in the sanctuary. And the good news I have for you today is you can hear the sound too. Listen, listen, hear the bells.